1, Episode 39 of the Potomac RPG Podcast. Detach yourself from reality and detach yourself to something more.
Welcome one and all to the Potomac RPG Podcast, your source for old news, tired conversation, and mediocre advice for all of your favorite tabletop role-playing games. I'm the personification of my unending march toward mortality, Adam.
I'm your better-looking version of myself, with magic, Ben.
And I'm the same character archetype that you always play because it's safe and familiar, Tom.
All right. Thank you for being on the show, guys. Great night last night, except that, Ben, you weren't there. Nick wasn't there. We were missing our paladin, that's for sure, because we had battles aplenty that Tom had set up for us, and we're all squishy. Tom, how did you feel about last night's session?
I was wary about it because I knew missing that many people, but also seeing how the combat was supposed to go, because you guys had you had a keep with a moat around it that, you know, there's a horde of barbarians, or not barbarians. Well, they were orc barbarians coming after you guys, but you had, you know, a lot of room to buffer to let them come to you and pick them off. It was only when the leader finally got to where you guys were and was charging in that I was like, I could see bringing, especially your character, Alma. I could see him bringing her down and possibly even killing her, depending on what your available healing was.
Yeah, my character is a little old lady, so having a gigantic barbarian orc storming the keep right in front of me was a little unnerving. Ben, we have a bit of a bone to pick with you because all of the bad rolls that you usually have were transferred to Matt for this session. He couldn't hit the broadside of a barn all night long. I don't know if he landed one blow. Did he, Tom?
Oh. It's hard because he had a lot of saving throw spells that he did. Every single one of those
eventually, but I don't think he hit on an attack the entire night. He was visibly frustrated the entire night and blaming specifically you, Ben. Ben, do you have a response to Matt?
I threw away that dice, so maybe the bad juju has transferred over to you, Matt. I'm sorry.
You killed the dice, and now that was a bonus action. The hex was moved to another set of dice.
Yeah. Well, you better bump up that Constitution score, otherwise it's going to be a short campaign for him. But it was a fun night last night. Thanks, Tom. Let's get into things for this week. One of the best parts about, and really almost the entire point of tabletop role playing, is to get to play someone else, someone different from yourself. But in order for that to happen, there needs to be a strong connection between player and character. And that's something that isn't easy to accomplish. This is something they struggle with in video games all the time. It's hard to actually care about what the character is doing and the consequences they face and who they are. But it's not a cakewalk for TTRPGs either. So that's what we're going to get into today, caring about your character. So, Tom, thinking back through all of your characters, is there one that you cared about the most? And if so, what made you care about that character more than others?
I have a few, but I'm going to probably start with Brooke, mostly because she was the one I've had the longest campaign with so far, in terms of levels and everything. But the big thing for Brooke is I understood her as a character, and I think a lot of that basis is from having lots of available RP to build a headcanon and build an identity for that character. And, you know, interacting, not just like, you know, combat or dungeon crawling or what have you. It was mostly separate from the DM, having, you know, conversations in character with other characters and having moments that helped me understand and visualize that character a lot more. So they meant more. There was more time put into that character.
Makes sense.
Instead of just on sessions, you know, we go through the dungeon, I swing a sword, you know, I talk to a character for, you know, a few minutes, but there was a lot more groundwork built into that character.
Yeah, I remember back then almost thinking, like, whenever we'd have our Saturday night game night, almost thinking of that as the break rather than the main plot line, because we'd get into our Saturday session and it'd be combat and maybe some RP, but through the week was like the heavy RP. So it was almost a reverse thing where the session was actually the break from the story more than the time during the week. Ben, how about you? What character did you care about the most, and why?
It's definitely Yarrow from season 2.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I poured a lot into Yarrow. She was a character that I really could identify with because she had so many characteristics from the music I was listening to and the things that I was going through in my life at the time. And oh, she was a little too close to what I was experiencing, though in a badass monk form. But
gotcha.
yeah, I mean,
Well, that's cool. I mean, I know I would say, if you asked me this question 2 months ago, I probably would have said Finbin, just my little halfling barbarian, just because I poured so much. But honestly, I'm gonna say Tormid is really soaring up the charts and might be at number one right now, just because we've been able to dive into a bit more of the regrets that come with age, and the things that, looking back on your life, that
mhm.
you wish you had done differently, and still facing the consequences of those decisions and what you do about it now so late in life. Kind of hitting a little close to home on some of that stuff, but I would say Tormid right now is really doing it for me. Like, I'm getting really attached, and now that I have a miniature, I have to be really attached to him, and hopefully not get Ben's bad juju on my character, because I'd like to hold on to Tormid for just a little while. But yeah, it's really interesting thinking about what kind of cements that connection between a player and their character. And to kind of dig into that a little bit more, let's get into the questions for the week. Our first post comes from Reddit user Gortzart, who asks, how do you make yourself become attached? How do you become attached to the character that you play, to where they're more than just words or on a sheet, more than just a temporary placeholder until they die? I love D&D, but here lately, as I've gotten older, I just don't care if my character dies. When I was 13, I was playing a Wookiee Jedi that got killed in a Star Wars campaign, and I cried. Now that I'm older, I just make a character and then immediately start making the next one in my head. I miss being attached to characters. So my question is, how do I make myself become attached? Now, Ben, this is coming from a player perspective only. So as a player, what can you do to become more attached to the character that you're playing?
So I think for all of us in Potomac RPG, we put a lot of emotional investment in our characters through backstory and the relationships that we develop within the party and even to the NPCs. Um, I remember Yarrow, the character that I was attached to, had this kind of love relationship with one of the NPCs who was one of the girls that we had rescued from some orcs that were gonna throw her into a chasm or something, and that's cool. She was a long term NPC until, actually I don't know what happened to her. Did she die horribly?
Yeah, well, she
She probably
died.
died
She died.
horribly. Yeah.
Remember, she was actually kind of protecting my character for a bit. Seems to be kind of a trend here, where you're protecting my character and you end up losing your life. But you then came back as some kind of undead thing, didn't you? For
Yeah,
Yarrow.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
true. She came back as not quite living, not quite undead.
yeah.
But
Oh.
yeah, I would recommend to this player is to put some emotion behind your backstory. Really think about how your characters are connected to the world that's around them, what they care about, and kind of let your characters live through what they care about, and get emotionally invested in what your character cares about.
Makes sense. Well, Tom, how about you? Any advice as a player to become more emotionally invested?
I mean, I agree with Ben. Is living your character through what they want and what their ties are to the world. For me, I I go back and forth with struggling with this myself. For me, I have to have a reasonable goal for my character. Because I can put emotion in my character. I can, have them have reasons. It's that flip side of it's what my character would do. Of they are, following a goal that they believe is correct. Not out of spite of anybody else, but just that's how they interact with the world. But it also has to kind of agree to some extent to what the plot is, what the hooks are, and it's a balancing act. For me, it's finding that one goal or that one overarching theme that does tie to what's going on in the story. Like with Andreas in Inverness, it's there's been a struggle because he's not really had the goals beyond he was in Baldur's Gate, he was tied to Baldur's Gate, but now we're traveling to towards Elturel into the hells and everything, and trying to find meaning in that goal. And it's been kind of I found a little bit of connection with having that bit of existential crisis and identity crisis with the character and trying to figure that out, but then also playing that into the character itself, where they're trying to figure out who they are while I'm trying to figure out who they are, and then working with what's around them to build off of that.
So,
Yeah.
Tom, there was a little bit in there that I want to play off of, and that is, I think it's okay to have something that your character cares about that doesn't actually get into your RP, or doesn't necessarily have to get in the RP, but you hope that it comes out. But having internal conflicts that are even just internal to how you think about the character and don't actually make it into the RP is okay. That kind of builds the depth of the character in your mind, and helps you to portray them in other ways. I mean, just
Absolutely.
like I you guys don't know me. You don't know all the things that I
You
am.
don't know what I've been through.
Yeah, but all those things have made me the best version of myself that now lives, and you get to enjoy my company because of all those cool things. But your character can be the same. You don't need, everybody doesn't need to know all of the details of their backstory for it to impact how you RP them and how you present them to the world.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes flaws so important to this, is that that's where you get to play with that kind of stuff. And you're absolutely right, Ben. It doesn't have to come out in an RP. You hope that eventually it will, but this is not a case where at session 0 you're saying, oh, well, I'm X, Y, and Z, and these are my flaws. They should be informing all the decisions that you make along the way, and just underneath that surface, and let the other players figure that stuff out as you go along, and that's what kind of builds those connections. I mean, when it comes to like feeling connected to your character, I think in both the examples that you guys gave, it wasn't anything about a combat. It wasn't even really too much about the plot. It was about the relationships with other characters or NPCs that seemed to drive those connections. Whenever I think about things like Finbin back in season 1, his relationship with Tom's character and Sarah's character and Steve's character were a lot of the driving force behind why I cared about Finbin. And I would say that if you're having trouble connecting to a character, possibly pick out another player in your group and see if you can form some kind of relationship with that character to really build up that connection. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, Tom, does that make sense to you in terms of focusing on another player to build your own character?
Well, and that's one of the things that is kind of the second part of what I was saying, that I haven't gotten to yet. But all these characters I struggle with. Stranger was one, my warlock, Andreas is another, and I have a habit of lashing out in different directions, trying to see what fits, and it gets a little bit sporadic, and the character seems a bit unhinged. But then I can consistently, and you're 100% correct. Every time I've been able to ground a character that I've been struggling with, it's because I sat down and worked with getting them to engage with other characters. So Stranger, I was struggling with until I had him sit down and play and actually have a conversation with your character Milo about what's important in life and where he would be going and what
I don't know
matters.
how helpful Milo was in that situation. She's kind of a smartass, so but
Well, even
I
so,
get
like
your
even as a smartass, it still it was a back and forth that actually made him think. And it kind of I believe there was actually a moment where she started being a smartass, but then when he was still communicating with her and wasn't just dismissed, you seemed to respond a bit more positively, or at least confused about why I was serious. Okay. And then with Andreas, actually having a conversation with your character Tormund, and grounding that character a bit more helps a lot. So you're 100% correct in that one.
Well, Ben, I'm really looking forward to having some kind of personal connection between one of my characters and one of your characters. Although we kind of had that with Dungeon World, didn't we? There was a little bit of a connection there. But Tom and I and Steve and I and Sarah and I have had some interesting RP sessions. I think I'm going to get blown away if our two characters at some point in a campaign kind of really get close,
Yeah, I think in this particular campaign, there is a lot of potential for that.
Well, sure. I'm a little old lady. You got to protect me. You're a paladin.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, I want to see that. I want to see that.
There you go.
The DM wheels are turning now.
well, hopefully for Gortzart that helps out a little bit. Hopefully you find that connection that you're looking for with your character, because honestly, it's what makes this game so great. And wish all the best for you in the future.
I have news here.
And the sound of Ralphie the News Goblin can mean only one thing. It's time for Potomac RPG News. So it looks like the speculators were a bit off regarding the new D&D book that was announced last Tuesday. We had seen all sorts of word that it was going to be a Dragonlance adventure, and we were talking about that and fully expecting it to be Dragonlance. Well, turns out it wasn't a Dragonlance adventure, but rather an anthology collection of short adventures called Candlekeep Mysteries. This has 17 one-shots from more than a dozen different designers that you can plug into your campaign. Even has some high-level one-shots, which is nice. But Tom, what do you think about this? Are you happy to see Candlekeep Mysteries come out, or would you have rather had a full Dragonlance adventure?
That's a tough one for me, because while as a DM, I'm excited for more content to use. As a player, I'm not really keen on the mysteries. As a player, I like doing the more cliche at this point, but more standard, adventure. The mysteries are a bit of a struggle for me. Just not something I'm as interested in. I do like the potential here. Again, as a DM, I like the potential of having of extra hooks. The concepts of that they throw out there of the adventure is not something convoluted that you're trying to bring characters meaning to. It's more of they find a book that then somehow directly leads them to in the adventure, and I like that simple yet direct plot hook that could I think really be. Again, I would have to read through what they actually mean and getting the book and kind of understand what they're doing with it. But I do like the potential of that, because plot hooks are a struggle. Like the current campaign I'm running with you guys, getting plot hooks to give you guys reasons to, do something are very vague and kind of convoluted, and just they almost have that video gamey kind of, you have to travel this direction for reasons and care about it. And when your characters do that, then we'll go to the next part of the arc. And I'm like, but that makes no sense. Another aspect of it that I'm kind of about, because of my experience again as a DM, is they mention how he's talking about third party stuff coming in, and I appreciate the diversity they can bring into it. I love that. But again, as a DM, at least with mechanics wise, I've found some of the more third party stuff, like again, the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, being a bit is a discordant note with the how everything else works. Like some of the writing and stuff is clearly different, and especially when it comes to mechanics, it can tend to be more vague, which when you're trying to run a game, it can cause a lot of like waffly rules, and it gets a bit tedious, just because it's not as thorough, I feel, or not as well thought out as a lot of the other content. So I'm loving the potential of the diversity and again new ideas coming in. I'm wary of that lack of polish that I do have seen with other concepts and modules and mechanics that are in the more core material.
Yeah, and I would agree with you in that, like, I'm reading through this story, and the common theme throughout all these adventures is they begin with a book. They're framed as players having discovered a book, and that leads them out into this adventure. And then it kind of gets back to what you're saying, where it's like it's almost like a 17 quests that your players can go on, kind of thing. And honestly, from the first couple seasons where we were dealing with books, like it was mind numbing, like how everything got tied back to books. Now this sounds like, hey, this is just a story about something, go figure it out. But if it ends up being that this book itself is some demonic presence in the world that's going to ruin everything, no thanks, I'm done with books in that sense. Ben, how did you feel about Candlekeep Mysteries? Because Candlekeep itself is awesome. I love it. It's a great location. It's a great thing to build off of. But I know you like your D&D or your fantasy novels as well. We covered that last week. Would you have rather seen a Dragonlance book?
I never really got into Dragonlance, so I don't.
Well, I guess that answers the question then, right?
Yeah. I've read like one Dragonlance novel, and it did not have a big impact on me. So I guess I don't really care that there's no Dragonlance. I actually am really excited to see more one shots. That's something that I think the current the 5e stuff that's been published is not containing, except through third party. There's just not enough one shots that are really well thought out and planned and correctly balanced and play tested. And that's something that I don't have the time to run a full campaign, but I would love to do a one shot. So this is where I would be pulling it from at the moment. So I'm excited to read into them to see what kind of piques my fancy, and be throwing that at you players in a little bit when we have the next downtime.
Yeah, well, and I hadn't thought about that originally. Like in our group, we have, Steve's running a long-term campaign. Tom, you just started a pretty long campaign with Storm King's Thunder. But there's a lot of times when Steve needs a break, and it's only going to be for a couple weeks until he's ready for the next thing, or maybe it's just a 1 week thing that he needs time off, or Tom's not available or something like that. To be able to pull out a one shot and run it. I think you're right on the money there, Ben, that it's nice to have this in our repertoire to be able to pull out when we need it. So good point. Yeah, I'm excited to see what it is. I certainly am glad to see Candlekeep Mysteries rather than Dragonlance. I, like you, Ben, never really got much into the Dragonlance setting, so this is right up my alley for me. But if you're interested, it will be released on March 16th. I'm sure it'll be up for pre-order at some point here on Amazon and all that. So check it out if you're interested. But for right now, we're going to take a step out. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after the break. When we were first getting this podcast together, we knew we needed some good music. And we looked into a lot of options that are out there, but we settled on Soundstripe. At soundstripe.com, they have such a wide variety of high-quality music to choose from. Every song that you hear on this podcast is from Soundstripe, and we couldn't be happier with what they have to offer. And it's not just music. They have a ton of sound effects and video stock footage as well. So if you're making a podcast or videos on YouTube or have some creative project you're working on, check out Soundstripe. They're worth a look. And right now you can use the promo code Potomac RPG, all one word, and get 10% off. That's Potomac RPG, all one word, to get 10% off your purchase. Elevate your work with the finest stock media all in one place at soundstripe.com. And with that, let's get back to the show. How about another question? This post comes from Reddit user 10MacAttack, who asks, my players don't seem to care much for their characters' lives or getting attached to the characters. Okay, so I am a brand new DM right now. I just started a campaign with my friends. So from a few adventures I've run so far, I've noticed my players don't seem to be very attached to their characters. I mean, they love goofing around and playing the game, and I have a lot of fun. I ran a campaign today where an NPC ended up stealing a kill and saving the party. The monster had 9 health left, and 2 of my players were critical, so I sent him in a bit earlier. So they decided, as punishment for stealing the kill, they decided to chain the dude up and hit him with a shovel. It was pretty funny, but they didn't seem to be considering the consequences. I want to try to add some more seriousness to it and want them to really fear for their characters' lives. For example, I've had multiple situations where a player went into critical condition and they didn't seem very worried at all. Does anyone here have any good ways to kind of get some more seriousness or emotion into the game at all? Thank you. All right, so now we have the flip side of this, the DM side. What are some things a DM can do to help their players connect on a deeper level with the characters they're playing? Ben, let's turn to you first on this. What do you think?
I think you need to have your characters, your player characters, working towards something personally as a character that they've got personal stakes in, something that actually connects to the character, and that the player and the character have both put some time and effort into, so that if the character dies, that the player actually feels sad about not getting this one thing resolved. I mean, it could be anything, but I don't know, building some cool magical weapon that they've spent several sessions assembling the components and getting all the things together for, that they'll never see how awesome it is, or I don't know, uncovering a mystery.
Yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, Ben, but like what I focused in on here was the term stealing a kill. And what that kind of tells me is that this is a very combat focused D&D game. Like that there's not a whole lot of RP going on. Now, if that's what your players want and that's what you like, great. But would you agree that this is sounding like you're basically just setting up encounters? This is a video game, right?
Yeah, that sounds right. I I know that this situation would not happen in Potomac RPG group.
No.
We have never uttered the words kill steal since I have been part of the group. So we've got a very different play style. So what is the dangling fruits that you can give to these power gaming players? I don't know. Okay, so back in old D&D, they had new characters that joined a party were low level. Like you were adventuring in a group, and you would have some followers, and when your character died, you would put some more dice behind one of your followers, and then they would become your character, or you would meet in town and find another character. And I think there was even like you could go back to like a first level where the rest of your party would be 5th or 6th level. You would have a first level character that you would then have to level up over time, and it was quicker than leveling up otherwise, because there's just tons of experience coming in a high level group. So it was a little faster, but I think for a power gamery group, you need maybe something like that, where you can't just go into town and there's another full-fledged adventurer
Ready to go.
Yeah, in their plate mail right off the presses, and the backstory that they've carefully crafted in heroic fashion so that they can join the group again.
Yeah, I mean, this is tough because like the DM, it seems like they don't want it to be a power gamey combat focused thing, but it seems like that's how it's going, and that's how the players are responding. So it's not. I wonder, especially since they're brand new, whether this was kind of an easy aspect to fall into, and as they get better they'll be able to flesh out that RP more, or if it's actually what they enjoy the most. Tom, you have two different groups going on, and I know our Monday group is a bit more combat focused. So what do you think about this situation? How do you add that attachment or connection with characters, especially in a situation that's a bit more combat focused?
So this group speaks very similar to my Monday group. They are very combat oriented. They do treat it like a video game. They are power gamers. You give NPCs and they kind of, they don't really pay much attention to, the NPCs unless they are of direct value to them. Like, what can I get from you? And at first I did, like you said, I had that mentality where I felt like I needed to get them to play the game like I expected them to. But I came to the realization that if this is what's fun, if they have fun killing things and doing that, that's one thing. To harken back to answer the question more of how to get them to care more about their own characters, to harken back to what you were saying before, Adam, about how if you have the characters interact with other characters, that helps ground them. You can do that in combat, because especially if the party has different strengths and weaknesses, like have more casters or more melee combat characters. If you start, and then to digress this a little bit, so there was a bit of a break where we, Adam, you were busy with work, and we didn't really want to continue the story with only 3 players. So I just did like a Mega Man style, boss rush, where I was like, okay, here's some different groups of monsters or encounters from different CRs, and I basically just worked, started at CR8 because they're 3 level 7 characters, and then got short rests in between, move on to the next tier of CR9, CR10s, and they had a blast with that. Like just non-canon, I'm just here's a combat, and ready, fight, roll initiative. There's no prep or any kind of like story to get in the way. It's just you versus the monster. And they had a blast with that. And to again dial it back now, because I was able to kind of throw just random things at them, I was able to kind of test out their strengths and weaknesses a bit and a better understanding, because all the encounters said this is deadly, this is going to kill your character, based off of like standard 5e rules. They were fine with it. They had no worries. And I was able to kind of gauge what they were strong against, what they were weak against. And because of that, I was able to help the other characters shine more. So like there was a point where they faced a fiend, and the cleric was like, wait a minute, I cast Banish on him. And I'm like, okay. And even despite everything, like he was very unlikely that he was actually going to succeed. It succeeded. And that just removed that encounter. And because of that moment, even though it was a combat moment and a mechanics moment, that moment kind of had this fun interaction between the characters that was almost like RP. And they kind of gained a newfound respect for each other as players, or each other as players and characters, and kind of got that connection. So they care a bit more about and then after that there was a lot more teamwork and a lot more engagement between the players and within that the characters.
Yeah, I mean, when you look back at this question, I mean, basically says that they love goofing around and playing the game, and I have a lot of fun. Well, this might be an opportunity to ping your players to say, hey, do you like it the way it is, or would you rather see more RP in there and care about your characters more? Because you may find that no, they're not looking for some deeper emotional type game. They want to play a combat focused game where they don't care about their characters, that they're just trying to build the most powerful or interesting character combat wise that they can, and that's what they enjoy doing. So yeah, I before you get too hung up on their attachment to their characters, it may be a good idea to ping them to make sure that you're giving them what they want and not what you think that they want or need. So yeah, good luck out there, 10 Mac Attack. Would love to hear how your campaign is going, and if you make any changes, how those turn out, and hopefully you have a real solid campaign and all your players enjoy playing the game. But let's get into our next segment. So even though today's topic isn't all that heavy, it's still nice to take a break and get into some lighthearted stuff. So listeners, it's time for a palate cleanser. Welcome to the Palate Cleanser. Now, this week we got a challenge from our friends over at the Pot of Many Things to do the D&D hashtag, or D&D tag, I should say. The D&D tag was started by YouTube star Ginny D, and it's a list of questions everybody can answer about their experiences playing D&D. First I saw it was Ginny D and Mark Humes got together to do the D&D tag, and it was a pretty cool thing to see. Now, there's 3 of us, so this will be a lightning fast D&D tag. So we're going to zip through these questions at a pretty good clip. So are you 2 ready?
Yep.
All right. Well, let's get into it. So what we're going to do here is I'll go through these questions 1 through 15, and it'll just be Ben, Tom, me, and then move on to the next one. So let's see how this goes. First question. Ben, what was your first D&D character?
She was a half-elf ranger, and I don't remember her name.
Tom.
Darman, the human Way of the Four Elements monk.
And mine was Finbin, the halfling barbarian. Question number 2, which D&D class is your least favorite to play, or do you not want to play? Ben.
Oh, man, I've never played a barbarian, and I don't really want to.
All right, Tom.
Rogue. I've played one before, and it's not as much fun as I would like.
My least favorite is probably cleric. Honestly, just not my bag.
Okay.
Question number 3: what D&D spell would you most want to have in real life? We actually covered this at one point in our previous palate cleanser. So Ben.
Oh, definitely prestidigitation. Just so many things.
Especially with kids, the ability to clean stuff up with a wave of the hand would be
Absolutely,
great.
yes.
All right, Tom.
Prestidigitation is a good one, but I would say mending. Because think about it, you never have to buy a new pair of shoes, never have to buy new clothes. You just mend it and you're good.
Boy,
Saves so
that
much
takes
money.
away the whole great experience about buying new clothes.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Disguise self for me, that'd be great. Hey, you can basically RP in real life. Disguise yourself as anybody you want to be. So question number 4, what's your favorite D&D monster? Ben.
I'm gonna say some of the aberrations, the cool ones. What's the one with the many gibbering mouths? And
I think that's a gibbering mouth.
Gibbering mouther.
Oh, okay, cool. Gibbering mouther. Tom.
A lot of them, especially as a DM. But I'm really curious about the Death Kiss. It's basically a creation of beholders. It's like a type of lesser beholder.
Nice. I would say, what's the one that we faced in Avernus before we went through that portal? The guy on the nightmare. Was that a Revenant?
Don't actually know.
I thought he was a Death Knight, but
Death Knight.
We
Steve
called
said
him
that
because he
wasn't
looked
right.
like
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
Okay. Well, instead of that, I'm going to go vampire. That's one of the ones that we've both fought in Iran once, and they were a lot of fun. And Ben, you got to run a vampire too, right?
Yes, I got to run
Yes.
2 vampires.
2 vampires. Actually, no, it was
Four.
two adult vampires and 2 baby vampires.
Yes, that's true. Wait, you
Probably
guys
vampire
wiped the
out.
floor with that vampire battle, though. So,
All right, question number 5. What's your favorite NPC or villain that you've encountered or created? Ben.
Dragon, young dragon, the green dragon from Fandelver.
Nice. All right, Tom.
Me, it was, and I don't want to spoil too much with the campaign I'm going for the Monday group, but I have a halfling warlock that's that might come up later in the story, and it's kind of cool having a character that the players wanted to got attached to suddenly become a BBEG.
Gotcha. Very cool. I know one of my favorites was Stark. You remember him, Tom?
Yes.
From Fandelver, which was our basically sidekick goblin. He was a lot of fun to have around. Really enjoyed him. So number 6, has one of your characters ever died? Well, shit, Ben, you got this one. Has one of your characters ever died, and what killed them? Ben, which one are you going to pick?
Okay, so Yarrow has died. She almost died a couple times. I don't remember what actually killed her this last time.
It was a wasn't it wasn't pirates. They came up over the boat. Remember?
Sahugan?
Was it Sahugans? Might have been. Yeah, I can't remember, but yeah, I just remember it was in the belly of the boat, and my character ran away.
Yeah, those
while
are
yours got
Sahugans.
slaughtered.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So really, what it is what killed you was abandonment from your allies, and leaving you to die. So okay, Tom, how about you?
For me, I had Stranger, my warlock, who was just poison damage, just insane poison damage.
That's right.
And Brooke, my bard, was a weretiger, sneak attack.
I don't think I've ever died. I can't think of any character I've had that actually died.
Wow.
No. Well, so
well done.
I am. Yeah, so it's all about making sure you're in the back and run away whenever you can. Number 7, what's your best natural 20 story? Ben.
Oh man.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of nat 20s. Like, I can't think of a nat 20 story.
In the boss fight in season 1, my character, a Dwarven Ranger, opened up the fight with an arrow to the forehead of the BBEG, and that was pretty epic.
Nice. Tom.
For me, I'm going through a lot of them, but mine was actually an RP where my bard accidentally got a nat 20 on a persuasion check to adopt a child from her father and her abusive father, and she got the child, and she became a mother.
There you go. Very cool. I think mine, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, this was a RP between Brooke and Finbin. I don't think anyone else saw it, but you remember when we were shooting crossbows in the forest? And there were 3 shots in a row. And I swear, I could be wrong, but I swear, like, I hit the first 2 and then the last one was a crit. It was such a beautiful moment, just these 2 characters in the wood, because Finbin had never used a crossbow before, and Brooke was teaching Finbin how to use it. And it was 3 strikes in a row, and I'm almost positive, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but I'm pretty sure the last one, I hit the first 2 and then the last one was a crit on top of it. And it was just like story-esque how it played out, and I loved it.
I do remember that. That was a really cool moment. And just, I can't remember what he said, because you had Finbin said some sort of like catchphrase when he fired. We were talking about like raid shooting or something, and because he was barbarian raging.
I can't remember what it was, but
I don't know if it was like boom or something, but he said something before he fired every time, and it was so adorable.
All right, question number 8. What's your best nat 1 story? Ben.
Oh boy, are there any good nat 1 stories?
I don't know.
So in Steve's Acquisition Inc. campaign, I don't know if it was a nat 1 or not, but my character was above this cesspool that drained down into the elemental plane of garbage, and he slipped and fell in. I think that had to have been a nat 1. So.
All right, awesome. Tom.
For me, it's hard to think of anyone like all of my roles. But the more recent one was just last night when Sarah's character was trying to kidnap a NPC that was valuable to another player character, Steve's character, and I rolled for like the last like strength check to keep him from getting kidnapped. I rolled a nat 1, and it was just a funny like I looked at him like, oh, 1.
Yeah.
It was like, come on.
I think mine goes back to Acquisitions Incorporated as well, Ben. Didn't I kill your character with a nat 1? Because I was trying to stab something in the back. And
No, you killed the character with a natural 20 because you were charmed or possessed at the time.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, my nat 1 was same campaign where I was right behind the villain, ready to stab them in the back, and somehow, even though I was only right behind them, I missed with my sneak attack, and it was just one of those things where it should have been an easy kill, and I just could not hit this person in front of me, even though they had their back turned, and I was a rogue. So moving on to number 9, what's the highest level you've ever played a character to, Ben?
Ooh, probably 10 from the season 1.
Tom?
10, season 1. We did.
And 10, season 1 for me as well. Question number 10. Okay, what's your favorite magical item, Ben?
The belt of Dwarven kind.
Okay, Tom?
Eagle whistle. It's from the Tales of the Yawning Portal. And it basically, you blow the whistle and it gives you a fly speed that you can, and based off your con and everything like that for duration. But it's just hilarious because you can have someone give a fly speed, but they're blowing like a whistle the entire time.
Mine is the Berserker axe that Finbin had from season 1, because there was a high chance of me just killing everyone around me at any point in time, and it was a lot of fun. Question number 11. If you had an in real life alignment, what would it be, Ben?
Oh man, probably neutral good.
Tom?
Neutral good.
And I'm neutral good as well. I'm not as much of a rule breaker to get into the chaotic good side. So neutral good for me. Question number 12. If you had to date one of your characters, which one would you pick?
Oh man, I feel like Yara would be really a little too high maintenance for me. Most of my other characters are male. But that's all right. I would probably date my my ranger from season 1. He's a really down to earth guy. And
Bell,
yeah, Belthus. He was
Belthus.
Yeah, you could at least have beer with that man.
There you go, Tom.
That's a hard one. A lot of my characters have so much baggage that, again, you said really high maintenance. Like I dumped so many flaws into my characters. I'm just like, I don't know if I could handle that. I guess the one you guys not remember Nearlith, the kind of the elven
right, the Bladesinger
wizard. Wizard. I didn't play her for more than like a few sessions because we kind of went down that campaign at that point. But I feel like she was the most. She wasn't trustworthy at all. She was super manipulative, but I feel like she was the most stable of all my characters that I've had. So,
okay, very cool. Mine, of course, would be Milo. Oh man, she's like the personification of everything awesome. Like she would be just everything from the character art to the type of person she was, and the fact that she was loaded with money. Everything was great with Milo. Question number 13. Is there a character you want to play but haven't had the chance to play yet?
Yes, a Warforged Paladin.
There you go. Warforged Paladin.
Yeah. No, it's fine.
Tom, how about you?
I have one. There's it's kind of a backup character. I have a Order of the Scribe Wizard. Because Order of the Scribe is a really cool mechanics class, and I just want to make that really nerdy, kind of socially awkward, as I am, character that kind of doesn't understand sarcasm and just kind of is just fun to be around because they just are honest and kind of just wholesome in that way. but also
Okay.
super nerdy and kind of will get on a tangent about something random, which I also do. So
I want to play a character who's basically either orc or half orc uh, spellcaster who thinks that he's really smart because he's the smartest one out of his tribe, but trying to make his way in the world and use words that sounded really good, but they didn't make any sense within the sentence that he was using it in. That's the kind of thing that I want to play, where like he's trying to make himself sound smart because he thinks he's smart, but he uses words incorrectly, and that's the kind of thing that I want to play at some point here. Question number 14: Are you a dice goblin or a dice minimalist, Ben?
I'm definitely a dice minimalist. I only get out my red dice when I'm playing like a flame person. Only my blue dice when I'm playing Porto, the water ice focus guy, and I'll take one of the unornamented gold dice so I can roll with advantage and disadvantage. Very minimal.
There you go, Tom.
I'm a dice goblin.
Yeah.
I know I said the previous session that I had like 10 to 15 because I kind of didn't count them, but I did count them before the podcast, and I have at least 22 sets of dice.
There you go.
Wow.
Which I'm sure there's plenty of listeners being like, only 22, but
Yeah. I still have a lot of dice in my wish list that I want to buy. So
there you go. I am a dice minimalist. I tried to become a dice goblin and I got like 7 sets in. I was like, that's enough. I'm done. So I am a minimalist as well. Last question. What rule or mechanic have you never quite wrapped your brain around, Ben?
Oh man, grappling is just grappling.
Yes, absolutely. Tom.
for me, it's like hiding, stealth, and like surprise. Because that's also why earlier I said I didn't like doing rogues, because rogues are just so fiddly and circumstantial, and like the rules are so vague on how are you hidden, are you not hidden. It just doesn't make any sense
up
to
to
me.
the DM, right?
Yep. Yep. I'm gonna go ahead and go with grapple as well, Ben. That whole thing just
Lots of overlapping different rule sets, and you've got to be flipping from one part to another part in the player's handbook, and then there's some stuff from the Dungeon Master guide that you've got to bring in too. It's a mess.
To be fair, that's most rules in like 5e. A lot of them are like that. Like how many conditions revert to incapacitated, which then you have to look at the incapacitated description to then get more details on it.
As opposed to restrained, as opposed to grappled, as opposed to
paralyzed,
any number of different conditions that can come along the way.
And then like invisibility references like smoke and light obscurity from darkness, which then just references. It just
that's a good one.
down.
No, I'm going to switch mine out for the obscurity things like with fog cloud and stuff like that. Like it makes no sense. Like if I'm right next to a person, can I still see them? Can I not? It's fog, for God's sake. It's not an opaque wall that's been placed between you and other characters. Like the what you can see through things like fog cloud or sleet storm and stuff like that drives me nuts because it makes no sense to me.
You're right. It should be like distance. It should be like you're obscured from 30 feet away, but if you're right next to him, you take a small decrease in the
or +2 AC, something like that within a certain amount of distance. But after that, you can't see anything. Yeah, I see, Ben, you solved it already. Well done, good job. Well, that was the 15 questions. That's the D&D tag. It's been going around Twitter and stuff. So if you do a podcast, if you do a YouTube channel or anything like that, good thing to get into to kind of promote this D&D tag. But let's get into the last post for the week. This comes from Reddit user Firestrike14, who asks, what do you do when you get too attached to your character? So I've created a very deep and well-written character that I really, really love. However, a month-long streak of bad luck, my DM's emphasis on mortal peril, and the impulsiveness of my party has led to several near-death experiences. I'm getting so sick of the constant danger and so scared for my character's survival that it's getting in the way of my fun. I have absolutely no desire to kill this dragon that the DM wants the party to fight because I already feel far too vulnerable as it is, and I don't take any of the opportunities to actually look cool because I'm too scared of what's going to happen if I fail the roll. What do I do? Is this a problem with my group or campaign or with me? Is there a protocol for getting less obsessive over the character's safety? So kind of go in reverse on this here in terms of how do we step back a little bit and be okay with putting our character into danger despite our love of that character. So Tom, let's turn to you on this. What do you do?
I mean, I guess there's a little bit of things I don't fully understand with like just because your party's going into danger, do you have to? And what is also my question to you is, what does your character want? Because I understand you want your character to be protected, but is your character, do they care about their own mortality as much? Because if they do, and those line up, that makes perfect sense. You could basically have your character hang back. Yeah, they can go and face the dragon, and you have your character hang back. As for, your concern, I think talking with your DM about your concerns as well, because if you really like this character, and you just, maybe you could have a different character, but then it comes to the point of, if you like this character so much that they're so important to you that you don't want to use them, what are you saving your character for? I guess that kind of goes back and forth of, if you keep him too protected, then you're not actually using them and you're just holding on to that idea.
If you love something, you have to be willing to set it free, right?
Exactly.
Plain and simple.
See, you're so much more poetic than I am. That's what I love about it.
Ben, what do you think on this? If anyone should have fear about losing their character because of dumb decisions their party makes, it's you. So I think you are uniquely qualified for this one.
I think I've got two thoughts. One, you should just George R.R. Martin it, and you've built up this character, give them an epic finish, and just kind of make sure everybody feels it in their soul when your character dies, and build it up as much as possible. And the other thought is that you should just try and plan an exit for your character from the campaign arc if you really are so attached to them that you think that it's interfering with the play and your enjoyment of the game. Give them a nice place to retire fighting dragons in the far north, because that's what they want to do. And
nice. I
roll
like
yourself
that. I like that. Yeah, kind of an exit stage right for your character that you can kind of live with, rather than seeing them slaughtered by whatever demon or devil that comes your way.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I would also say that to Ben's first point, part of the thing that makes us love characters is that they have an epic story. And a lot of times epic stories end with an epic death. So I think maybe getting with your DM beforehand and saying, look, if it ever comes down to my character dying because my party are idiots and got me in trouble, this is kind of how I want it to play out, or just emphasize that, hey, I really want to make sure that death means something. Don't just gloss over it and say, yeah, you're dead, but really kind of build that up for me. And I think that will help get you okay with losing the character if it's something that you can remember as an epic moment within the game. So, I feel for you. Right now I'm dealing with that with Tormid because I really don't want to lose Tormid, and it is affecting things a little bit in terms of my willingness to kind of get in there and put myself at risk. But I'm starting to temper that a little bit. But it's a tough thing to do. So, wish you the best of luck, Fire Strike 14. Hopefully your party doesn't get you murdered. But that is going to do it for us this week. Remember, if you want to send in your questions or anything you find on the internet, you can send them to questions@PotomacRPG.com. Check out our store for merch at teespring.com/stores/PotomacRPG. If you'd like to support the Potomac RPG podcast, you can find us on coffee.com/PotomacRPG. And lastly, you can follow us at Potomac RPG on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Thanks for being on today, Ben and Tom. Thank you to the rest of the Potomac RPG crew, and of course, all of our wonderful listeners out there. So, for the Potomac RPG podcast, I'm Adam.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Tom.
Until next time, keep those dice rolling, keep those stories coming, and
never
stop playing.
To be fair, with my internet, like D&D, like
It's all
followings.
furry stuff. Yeah.
Well, no, that too. But